shit, that is fun. Really, there's no better time that you can have with a firearm than with a binary trigger. But is it worth it? I think so. Hey everyone, welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. So today we're going to pose the question, is a binary trigger worth it? Personally, I believe it is. But I also believe that just about any trigger upgrade is worth it for your AR-15. And we're going to discuss that today. We're going to shoot and we're going to have fun. But first, I'd like to invite you again to please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. We're working very hard on growing the channel, and any help that I can get in that is greatly appreciated. So, let's get to it. So AR-15s, it is the perfect platform for upgrading and customizing. And there's a lot of things you can do to it. I've already put out a couple videos on how I've customized the two ARs that I have behind me. And I'm going to put out kind of a whole series of videos on the different things that you can upgrade and how important they are, how beneficial they are. And so we're going to start with triggers. And to me, triggers are one of the most important upgrades that you can make. I kind of got to the whole trigger upgrade thing late in the upgrading process when it came to my 16-inch rifle here. And once I did put a different trigger in it, I realized that was maybe one of the most important upgrades I could have made. And so that's why I'm putting out this video, to help the new AR-15 owner, give them some information. Triggers are highly important to how your weapon functions and operates and how you are able to use it. And as far as the upgrades I've made, it's maybe the most effective one. It's just amazing the difference a good trigger can make. So I've got a couple different kinds of triggers we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about binary triggers because binary triggers are a hell of a lot of fun. But they're very expensive. And so you have to decide if a binary trigger is right for you. For me, it is. And I feel like it is for anybody that wants to have a lot of fun with their gun. But they're also a very effective tool. And I'll explain why. But we're also going to talk about, standard trigger upgrades like just your run-of-the-mill, not run-of-the-mill, but your Matchgrade trigger compared to like a mil-spec trigger. So when it comes to an AR-15, generally when you buy one, you get what's called a mil-spec trigger. Mil-spec trigger has the trigger shoe, the hammer, and it has a disconnector. So this trigger is the one that came out of my 11.5-inch AR pistol. So that's what we'll talk about first. Oh man, it's easy to get those accurate shots off with this thing. So I know I said that we were going to talk about the 11.5-inch gun first, but I've changed my mind. We're going to get to binary triggers. The trigger that I just showed you did come out of that gun, and that's the Palmetto State Armory EPT, or Enhanced Polish trigger. It's basically just a slightly upgraded mil-spec trigger, and it was definitely a decent trigger to start with. But there were a lot of reasons to change that out. And we will get into binary triggers here very shortly. But first I want to talk about a more standard trigger upgrade before we get into the binary. So we're going to go over that first. I'm going to show you what I did. We're also going to talk about some other ones that you could choose. And what might be the best option for you for the money to give you the most bang for your buck. God, you can almost shoot as fast with the trigger like this as you can with the binary. Sure is nice. So the first trigger I want to talk about today is the trigger that I put in my Smith & Wesson M&P 15. So this rifle came totally mil-spec when I bought it. Every bit of it. I mean, it didn't look like this at all. And we've already put out a video about how I took this from a very basic rifle to the tactical perfection that you see in front of you here. But so the trigger that I put in this one came with exactly just a basic mil-spec trigger. And it's a Smith & Wesson. It was a decent mil-spec trigger for sure. But it had a heavy trigger pull. I think somewhere between 6 and 7 pounds. And so once I started doing my research about triggers, and I realized that I could change the way this rifle handled for not really a whole hell of a lot of money, that became a priority for sure. So the one that I put in this was the Palmetto State Armory 3.5 pound Matchgrade trigger. This is what it comes looking like. And I did a ton of research before I bought this trigger. There's a lot of good options on the market. You know, Geissele is one of the best, options that you have. They're fairly expensive though. And they're also, most of them are 2-stage. Geissele does make a single stage trigger, but most of their triggers are 2-stage triggers. And I decided after doing my due diligence that I wanted a single stage trigger specifically for the kind of shooting that I do. So when it came to single stage triggers, and I wanted a drop-in trigger, which now looking back is funny, because I've taken apart all these triggers so many times and stuff. But before I really learned what I was doing, I wanted a drop-in trigger for the ease of installation. Now I realize installing a trigger is not difficult, no matter what you do. But a drop-in trigger just makes it that much easier. So when it comes to drop-in trigger options, you have CMC, you have Timney triggers. Rise Armament makes some great options that are really affordable. And then there's some options that are really expensive, getting up into the $200, $300, almost $400 range, which funny thing about that is that's about what the cost for this Echo trigger is. So we'll get into that here shortly. But for something that didn't have the binary option, I wasn't quite willing to spend that kind of money just yet. It's cost a lot of money to upgrade all the parts of this rifle. And so I had to save costs a little bit where I could. And Palmetto State Armory, I believe, is one of the best values that you can get when it comes to ARs, firearms, parts in general. My AR pistol is a Palmetto State Armory pistol. And the thing is fantastic quality. It's a great gun. I've never had a single failure with it yet. So I got this trigger after I got that. And so I already had a good idea of the kind of quality that you get from Palmetto State Armory. Now, I also watched a lot of YouTube videos from people doing similar things to what I'm doing here about all the different options I was looking for. And I was kind of torn between a CMC and a Rise Armament before I discovered this Palmetto State Armory trigger. Now this trigger, especially right now, they're still doing Black Friday, Cyber Monday kind of stuff. You can get this trigger for 99 bucks right now. 99 bucks. I paid a little more than that a while back. Not much more though. It was not much more than $100. And for that $100, you get a major upgrade to your system. So I'm take this thing off safe. Now let me just show you here. Unfortunately, I don't have a mil-spec trigger installed anymore to show you that. And it's kind of hard for you to feel what I'm feeling on camera anyway. But let me just show you how short and sweet this trigger is. So, I'll pull the magazine out of here to make it a little easier. So if you look at this trigger here, plus I just love the way it looks. Flat trigger shoe, skeletonized, it's really cool. Anyway, so when you pull this trigger back, super light, there's no creep, no uptake at all. It's just a click. It breaks like glass. I can only imagine what the more expensive triggers feel like, because this one feels amazing. the speed at which you can do follow-up shots and the accuracy you gain from that is, you know, it's almost indescribable. It makes an incredible difference. So I'm going to show you the reset on that too. It's that short. See if we can do it this way, maybe get a better view. So, yeah. I mean, that is a short, light, crisp trigger pull. And then the reset. I mean, it's just fantastic. So, as soon as I installed this, you know, I went and shot it as quickly as I could. And I was just amazed at how much better my rifle shot. I couldn't believe that I'd waited that long to change out the trigger because it made that much of a difference. When it comes to your accuracy, your trigger is generally going to be one of the main things holding you back. Because the longer it takes to pull through your trigger pull, the more opportunity you have to pull your rifle off target. And the harder your trigger pull is, it's just going to be easier for you to pull it off target trying to pull through that break. So having something like this with such a light, crisp trigger pull, no uptake at all, it makes you a better shooter immediately. So, you know, obviously, you know, that can't be in place of training. You know, skill is going to be the most important thing ever. And there are guys that are very good shooters with mil-spec triggers, absolutely. But you can make yourself a better shooter by upgrading your trigger. It worked for me. It'll work for you. Definitely. Also, so those other brands that I just mentioned there, you know, Timney, CMC, Rise Armament, Geissele, and there's plenty of others. I would like you guys to comment. Tell me what triggers you've used. Tell me what you like, what you don't like. I'd really like to know more. You know, I know about what I've used, and I could tell you about those for sure. But I would love to hear from you guys as well, because as much as maybe I can teach you something, I'm sure there are plenty of you that can also teach me something. So with the Fostech Echo trigger in semi mode, with the upgrades, it's still a fantastic trigger. But in binary mode is where the real fun is. That is a high rate of fire right there. So, we talked about your standard trigger upgrade with the Palmetto State Armory trigger that I put in my Smith & Wesson rifle. Now we're going to talk about the trigger I put in my Palmetto State Armory pistol. And this one is a completely different kind of trigger upgrade. I actually did this one before I did that. One of the whole reason that I bought this pistol was I wanted a platform to put a binary trigger in. I'd watched a lot of videos that just made binary triggers look like so much fun. You know, it's very difficult for the average person to get a full auto weapon these days. And so a binary trigger is a really fun option. It's not full auto, it's full semi-auto. And it's just a blast. So that's what I put in this. This is my Palmetto State Armory 11.5-inch barrel AR-15 pistol. The trigger that I put in this is the Fostech Echo Gen 2. Now again, with this trigger, I did a ton of research as well. Binary triggers are a lot more expensive than most of your standard drop-in triggers. You have a couple options, generally two kinds of options. You have Franklin Armory binary triggers, and you have the Fostech Echo triggers. Franklin Armory, the reason I went with Fostech was I'd read a lot of stuff about people outrunning the Franklin Armory trigger and having hammer follow and light primer strikes. So I didn't want that to be an issue, and the Fostech trigger specifically has a failsafe that prevents that from happening. So that's why I went with the Fostech. Now, if you are going to get an Echo trigger, there's also two options with that. There's this one, the Echo Gen 2, which is what I put in here, and they have the Echo Sport trigger. Now the Echo Sport is more of a component trigger where you have to, install each piece of it. Whereas the one that I got is pretty much a drop-in model. But one of the reasons, this one's $100 more expensive than the Echo Sport. But it has something that I really liked. Mostly just because I thought it was cool. But also because it helps make your rifle, or your pistol in this case, ambidextrous. Now if you notice, the safety selector there, safe, fire, and you've got a third position. And that is your binary or echo mode. So the Echo Sport trigger doesn't have that. It has a paddle right here to switch from standard semi-auto to echo mode. And I don't know, but I just thought it's cool to have a third position on my AR. Again, not full auto, but that's the position that full auto would be if it was. So it's just something I wanted. So that's what I got. And I'm glad I did. This trigger is, of all my guns, this thing is the most fun one to shoot. And it's because of this Echo trigger. It's just a blast. But it's very expensive. It was close to $400 when all was said and done to get this in and to actually upgrade the trigger the way it is now. Now, just so you do know though, right now with, again, like I said, all the Black Friday, Cyber Monday kind of deals going on, Classic Firearms has this trigger right now for the lowest price I've ever seen it. It's on sale on their website for $299 right now. Now, just to give you an idea for comparison, when I first started looking for these, they have this trigger in my local gun store for $529. So $529 is, that's a lot of money for a trigger. You can get it right now for $300. Now that's $50 less than what I paid for mine because it is on sale. So if this is something that you're interested in, and if this video helps you decide it all, go to Classic Firearms and pick one up for the lowest price I've ever seen them at. So anyway, I went and I got this Echo trigger. I installed it. I went and took it out shooting. It was fun as hell. You can fire so fast with it, and I'll explain why real quick. So the cool thing about a binary or Echo trigger is this, that it fires on the trigger pull and on the release. So I've got it in echo mode right here. You pull the trigger, you hear the hammer drop. When the bolt cycles and you release the trigger, the hammer drops again. Now standard semi-auto, which is right there, pull the trigger, hammer drops, release the trigger, and you just get a reset, just like any other semi-auto trigger. So that's what makes a binary trigger fun, is that third mode. Is that when you're in echo or binary mode, as fast as you can pull and release is how fast you can send rounds flying down range. So the better you get at it, you can almost fire this thing as fast as a full auto gun. A low cyclic rate full auto gun, but it's close to that nonetheless. And it's just extremely fun. Just make sure you have plenty of money for ammo because you go through it very quickly. You can go through a 30-round magazine in a matter of just a couple of seconds. But it's the most fun couple of seconds that you can have with a firearm, bar none. So anyway, I installed this Echo trigger. I went out, took it to the range, had a lot of fun with it. But there was something a little bit disappointing about it. Especially after I installed this match trigger in my other gun. The lightness, the crispness, the no take-up that a trigger like that has is really nice. And this trigger did not feel that way. It had a long, squishy, not stiff, but it had a heavy trigger pull to it in both semi-auto mode and in binary mode. And so, I was really happy to have that echo or binary function to it, but I was a little disappointed with the way the trigger felt. And I wasn't able to fire as fast as I thought that I should be able to. So again, getting online, doing some more research, I found some really amazing upgrades you can do to your Echo trigger. So if you have an Echo trigger or if you're thinking about getting one, definitely do this. I don't say maybe, absolutely, it's a game changer for your Fostech Echo trigger. The first thing is I got a new backup disconnector spring from Trigger Depot. It's $10. You pull your trigger out, you pull the old backup disconnector spring out of it, you put the new lighter spring in, and it's a night and day difference. It makes your trigger that much lighter, like just, I don't know how many pounds lighter, but it went from like a 7-pound trigger pull to like a 3-pound trigger pull in binary mode, and it's like a 2-pound trigger pull in semi-auto. It's lighter than this Matchgrade trigger. Now it's not quite as crisp, and there's a little bit more take up, but it's a lighter trigger pull than that is now, and it was much heavier before I changed that spring out. The other thing you can do, and this is something I just happened to find, Militia State Armory. It's a very small company. I don't think they're super well known yet, but they do a Echo trigger tuning kit. That's not what I ordered because I'd already, part of it was that backup disconnector spring, which I'd already got from Trigger Depot. But the other part is just a bushing. And there's a part of this trigger, you can do the research yourself. I'm not going to pull it all apart and show it in this video today. I might make another video just about that in the future. But you can look it up. You put this bushing on a little pin inside your trigger, and basically it limits the amount of travel that you have on your reset. So it actually makes your trigger pull shorter, and it makes the reset shorter, both in semi-auto mode and in echo mode. So it makes your trigger, when it's in semi-auto with those two upgrades, about as good as most match triggers. But it also makes it so that when you're in echo or binary mode, because it's lighter and shorter trigger pull and reset, you can fire much faster and be much more accurate because you're not fighting your trigger the whole time. I recommend anybody that's thinking about putting a Fostech Echo trigger in their gun, make sure you get those upgrades. Whether you just get the whole, tuning package from Militia State Armory, which includes both the spring and the bushing. Now keep in mind, I haven't used their spring, so I'm not sure if it's as good, the same, or maybe even better than Trigger Depot's spring. But from what I read, everyone recommended the spring from Trigger Depot. It was $10. That much for the spring. I believe the bushing was $16. So when you think about putting an almost $400 trigger in your weapon for another $26, you can make that trigger actually a fantastic trigger. Now, one thing I don't really have any experience with is the Franklin Armory binary trigger. So that's another thing that I would love any of you guys that do have experience with that to let me know about. The whole reason that I went with Fostech instead of Franklin Armory is because of, what I heard about people being able to outrun the trigger and get hammer follow from that. Well, since I've gotten a binary trigger, I realized that, man, you would have to be about as fast as Jerry Mikulik to outrun one of these binary triggers. This gun cycles faster than I can pull and release the trigger. Maybe someday I'll be faster than that. And if I get to that point, then I'm glad I got the Fostech. But I'm starting to think maybe that's not a reason to get that over the Franklin Armory. But I gotta say, especially with the upgrades, I am extremely happy with this trigger. Now, I'm gonna show you real quick why you can't outrun this trigger. Pull this rifle open, this pistol open. So if you look in there, right here is a locking bar. Now that is actuated by your bolt carrier group. And the trigger will not pull with this locking bar back. Once you pull it forward, you can actuate your trigger. So the way that works is when your bolt carrier cycles and comes back, it pushes this forward and makes it so that you can use your trigger, either pull it or release it. You can't pull it or release it without that forward. And so in that way, it makes it impossible to outrun that trigger. And it also makes it impossible to have any kind of out of battery detonation or anything like that that would be unsafe. So it's a very safe trigger. It's a very controllable trigger. Not super affordable, but in my opinion, absolutely worth the money. Like I said, this is the most fun weapon that I have, and it's because of this trigger more than anything else. So let's go shoot this a little bit, and I'll show you why. So we've talked about your standard kind of drop-in trigger upgrades that you can do. The one I chose was the Palmetto State Armory 3.5 pound Matchgrade trigger. We've talked about binary triggers and why I think they're one of the most fun things that you can put in your gun. Also, thinking about binary trigger, some people think that they're not very applicable to real life situations. But let me just tell you, you can do double taps that are so quick and accurate and on point. It's amazing. So if you're trying to put 2 rounds in your target, you can do that just as easily as 1 round with the binary trigger. So for that reason, it's also a very effective tool. But man, you can just mag dump like crazy too, and that is such a good time. Now, like I said, I would love to hear from you guys about what kind of triggers that you use, whether it be mil-spec, whether it be a Geissele or some other brand of drop-in trigger, or if you have a Fostech Echo trigger or a Franklin Armory binary trigger. I would love to get some feedback and hear from you guys because, we're going to have future builds on this channel and I want to try out different options. So please let me know what you think. I really hope that I gave you some good information here, that it was an entertaining video for you. We've got some really cool stuff coming up. Next week, we're going to do the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 9mm pistol. And I've got something really special coming in the near future. It's not quite here yet, so I'm not going to talk about it until I know it's a for sure thing, but I'm very excited about it. So stay tuned. Please, like I said, leave me a comment, comment, share, subscribe. Please, we're working on building this channel, and all the help I can get is greatly appreciated. So again, remember, I'm George from Sawtooth Tactical, and stay strapped to get clapped. Thanks.